I would like to call to order our work session meeting tonight. It's March 17th, and we welcome all of you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Boynton?
Here.
Mrs. Birch?
Here.
Mr. Akins?
Here.
Mrs. Macklin?
Here.
Mr. Lifford?
Here.
Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. First on our agenda is item number 2.01, which will be a presentation on safety and security personnel at the elementary building by our security supervisor, Mr. Healy. And our principals are here to support Mr. Healy.
Yes, just a heads up, a couple of them are on their way here. They have some parent conferences going on, but again, as you stated, that Mr. Healy's here, our security supervisor, and he's been with us a couple of months, and over that time, he's walked all of our buildings and done a great job of reviewing some assessments that were done prior to and during his leadership. As he goes through the presentation, just a heads up, we can only say so much. So, Mr. Healy, if there are some questions that you might need to say for an executive session, he'll make notation of that, just to ensure that we do not compromise the security of any of our buildings at this time. So thanks so much in advance. And at this time, I'll hand that over to you, Mr. Healy.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? When I was hired as security supervisor on December 6th of 2021, my first order of business was to tour the campus facilities. James Myers took me around to each of the buildings, and quite honestly, I was a little surprised at the distance between the buildings, but most surprisingly was the fact that we didn't have a security officer in each of those buildings. Carrollwood, for instance, is 2.2 miles from the main campus here. Central 1.2, Columbus 1 mile, and Glendale is 1.7, not counting any delays from getting stuck by one of the trains coming through. But again, it's a concern that of the proximity of the buildings, not having a security officer there. Our buildings are old. When they designed and built those buildings back in the 60s, safety and security wasn't a concern. You know, they have more doors than what they need in each of those buildings. In law enforcement and school security, we refer to those as soft entry points. They weren't designed for security, and as many measures as we try to take, sometimes people slip through, and we don't want that happening in our campuses, especially in our elementary buildings where our students, the younger students, are the most vulnerable. I immediately contacted members of the Ohio School Councils to provide a security assessment. Now, the members that participated in this, between myself, a member of Ohio School Council, Homeland Security, we have over 100 years of experience in law enforcement and safety and security in school buildings. Their recommendation through their audit agreed with what I had to say, that we do need security at each of those buildings. And some might ask what exactly the responsibilities of those officers would be at those buildings. On the monitors there, and these are some of the examples. They would monitor the campus and surrounding areas to ensure the safety and well-being of students and staff and the security of the facility. Display ethical and professional behavior in working with students, parents, school personnel, and outside agencies associated with the school. Promote student responsibility for behavior and attitude by serving as a role model in dressing and grooming professionally. Where district designed attire in a presentable manner during assigned work hours. They would intervene in situations likely to result in disruption or injury and direct students to refrain from such conduct. They would ensure a smooth traffic flow of students through the hallways, assisting students with on-time arrival to class and assigned locations. Assist with supervision in the breakfast and lunch periods and with morning arrival and afternoon dismissal of students. They would assist the staff, police, and emergency personnel in handling emergencies or disruptive situations. Assist visitors with directions and securing proper identification. And let me touch on one building in particular. At Central, when a visitor comes to the door, there is 120 feet of space between the time they enter that door to the time they make it to that office. And to not have security personnel within the building, it keeps me up at night, to be honest with you. They would also report any discipline infractions, unauthorized visitors, and acts of vandalism to the building administration, and notify the building administration, police, and/or appropriate emergency personnel of any emergency, potentially dangerous or unusual situations. Again, I came from a school district where we employed a security officer in each of our buildings. With the distance between the main campus and those buildings, and quite honestly, with more violent incidents occurring nationwide, is my strong recommendation that we employ a security officer in each of our buildings. Thank you.
One of the things that Thad and I talked about, as you notice in here, is there are clear distinction between their roles in that security department and the roles separate from disciplinarians. Our goal is not to police our children. Our goal is to establish relationships with our students, with our parents, with our staff, so we can have a safe environment in general. But it is not to discipline students, it is not to police students, but we are talking about securing the environment for our children and establishing relationships and rapport with our staff, our students, and our families. So I just want to also make that very clear. Mr. Heedy, if you can talk a little bit about your background, because he does have a very unique background. So he's not just coming from the security side of things, he's coming from an educational standpoint as well. So if you can talk a little bit about your background.
Sure. I started my professional career as a teacher in Akron Public Schools. I worked with then behavioral handicapped students. I then moved into law enforcement, quickly went through the ranks. I was a patrol officer, sergeant, detective, lieutenant. I retired as chief of police. Then I came to Warrensville as their security director, and I was there for roughly 6.5 years before I came to Bedford School. So I have a unique perspective in school security. And let me touch on what Dr. Johnson has said in regards to relationships. And I strive to get our officers to develop strong, safe relationships with students. I want students to feel free to come up and talk to our security personnel and tell them of issues and get out in front of things. We need to be proactive in our security and not reactive. And again, in fact, I talked to Mayor Berger about this too when we talked about some issues too. It's all about relationships. Our officers are not disciplinarians. That's not their jobs.
The other piece of that, I know one of the things that we talked about for President, Vice President, board members is also just that SEL component in general. So that training has begun even with our current security staff. Just this past Professional Learning Day, they went through a series of training with CPI, and I know you talked about continuing that training. But we also have plans, and we talked about the need to continue to invest in our SEL staffing in general. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the training that has been provided thus far.
The training that we've provided to our officers, crisis prevention, intervention, de-escalation training. So all of our officers receive that before they start their employment. We had our professional development day a few weeks ago. Again, it was all about de-escalation. So we went through a series of scenarios, how our officers should react. Again, it's a hands-off approach to disruptions, and we strive that. And we'll continue to train in that regard and make sure that our officers are well equipped to do their job correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Heady.
Thank you.
At this time, board, do you have any questions for Mr. Heady in regards to security in all the buildings?
Thank you for your presence today and the presentation. Can you go back to the slide right before this? Going back to it with Dr. One that's been passed. Right here. What sticks out to me the most is, specifically not policing our children, which Dr. Johnson is just definitely urging that that's not what we're doing, especially at the elementary age. I do understand what's needed for outsiders or parents or things of that nature, but the thing that keys into me is intervening in situations likely to result in disruption or injury and direct students to refrain from such conduct. That kind of flows into the disciplinary side. Am I right or am I wrong? Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
Well, a lot of these responsibilities for security officers all actually exist in the high school and middle school as well. Again, officers are told and trained not to have any physical contact with students unless they're a danger to themselves or others. And that's the only time they would intervene physically.
And I think one of the things we talked about when we talk about intervening is whether you are a security officer, you are a lunch monitor, you're the secretary, you're the bus driver, every adult, every individual should be respected, including our students. So one of the things that we try to reiterate is that if anybody sees a behavior that could cause a disruption or lead to an unsafe environment, you have a role and responsibility to intervene. So I want to make that very clear is why it says intervene or interrupt, because if I see a student, horseplaying or pushing or shoving, I hope that adult would turn and say, you know what, let's settle down, or redirect behaviors before it leads to a more unsafe environment, if that makes sense.
I know I see 2 of our elementary school principals. Would they be allowed to speak to what they see in their buildings as to?
If you want to go to the mic, I think you guys can speak in generalities without being too specific due to the confidentiality.
Oh, absolutely. So what we've seen in our building, and
Say who you are.
all those things, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mrs. Black.
Hi everyone, I'm Erin Black, I'm the principal of Glendale Primary School. And greetings to the board president and to the entire board and to Dr. Johnson, Bill Parkinson. So thank you for having me up here, and I would love to answer some of those questions for you. So what we're seeing in the building is pretty much what we've been seeing in the buildings for quite some time now as far as it relates to student misconduct. There is really nothing new. I do believe with the pandemic we have some newer behaviors. Students have had to make a huge adjustment to getting back to school and learning how to interact with peers. Also parents too, having to get used to different rules and routines. We've had our mask mandate, which now has just been lifted recently. And I know that was a bit of a concern and a new adjustment to our policy with parents and us having to enforce a lot more things. Us having to enforce maybe no visitors in the building and some things that we have changed. We've had students who, in every building I know, that may be a flight risk. And what that means is that, and I know you know very well of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Right? And when students feel intimidated, this pandemic has brought out a lot of emotional and mental health in every building across the United States of America. And so that what we're seeing is a lot of students, they respond differently. And administrators' jobs are ever growing, even our deans of students. So we're in IEP meetings, we're in SEL team meetings, we're in classrooms, we're trying to be instructional leaders. And sometimes with us being in a classroom, we can't necessarily get to the places that we need to get in time enough, and we want our buildings monitored. We want an extra set of eyes there to say, okay, even if it's a spill or something. Or I'll give you an example today. We had a light fixture, right, that just came unfastened. Our custodian was taking out garbage in an area and a light came unfastened. We needed someone there immediately to be able to do some things like that to secure our building. And so where before maybe we were able to get by without that extra set of hands, I feel like it was always needed. It's just something that's just been brought to us now as an option that we have.
Thank you, Ms. Black. That was a good one for that. Thank you. I didn't know if you wanted to hear from some others. I think Ms. Freak just came in.
Hello to the board. I apologize for my tardiness, but I wanted to make sure that I was here today to express my interest in having security in the intermediate buildings. I'm sure that I can speak for Ms. Rakowski because we both run the intermediate school buildings. I'm sure we have the same ideas of what we would like to see out of a security guard. And I don't even like using that word, security guard, but out of someone who could be, again, that second set of eyes, or actually third set of eyes. We have had, especially over the past few weeks, a number of parents who have entered our buildings that have, so I have been a little out of control, where we cannot even control them, where it takes me saying, if you don't leave, I'll have to call Bedford Heights Police. I never like to use Bedford Heights Police as a clutch. I never like to use any police department as a principal as a clutch. But when it's interfering with student learning and causing and making it an unsafe environment, and that every staff member in my building who has been there to help has helped, and that parent still won't leave, then I have to use the police department as a clutch. And fortunately, those incidents that have happened, me saying that, they have exited the building, but not without having a commotion outside of the building. And I just feel like having someone there that can keep that type of behavior under control is very beneficial for the students first. I want our students to be safe in Bedford, but there is only but so much I can do, my dean of students can do, without possibly even getting into a confrontation. So we talk about students being first, so we need to put them first. But we also need to talk about our staff, keeping them safe, and keeping the people who are right there at the front of the office safe. Because then I sometimes go home and worry that I just told this parent that I'm going to call the police. Will they come back the next day causing trouble or possibly bringing something into the school that can harm not only the staff but the students as well? So I know traditionally in other districts it has been the way of having them in high schools, but unfortunately in today's times, we really need security in every single one of our buildings. Now, let's talk about the security. If we're going to put security in place, we need to make sure that we find the right people for the right job. What I mean by that is they cannot be militant. They can't come in the schools and be militant. We do not want our students to be afraid of these individuals. We want these individuals to be a support to not only the adults in the building, but to the students as well. We want them to have a loving, caring, empathetic demeanor, meaning that they're there when the students come in the building to welcome them, to greet them. I don't want them to be militant, nor do I want, and this will be communicated should this pass to my staff, that we will not use them as a clutch to say, oh, if you don't act right, I'm gonna get so-and-so on you. That cannot be the culture of having the security in our building. They have to join our culture the same way our teachers work with our students, the same way our principals work with our students, our custodial staff work with our students. We try to do restorative practice in our building. I want that person to be a part of that because it's a universal thing in our building. So I just wanted to just make sure I voiced my concerns. I've had some incidents in the building or outside the building that have really scared me as a building principal. And if it scared me, I know it will scare the kids. And I do not want to see that for our Bedford City student children or the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Booth.
Thank you very much, Ms. Booth.
Any more questions, board?
Well, my question was really about, in terms of the plan, do we believe that one security person is going to actually get us to where we're trying to get, which is essentially a secure environment on multiple levels? The reason why I say that is, if you're talking about guarding from outside threats into the building, there seems to be more that we could do in terms of the actual building itself, the campus itself, to help with that situation. That you mentioned all these soft entries, so one security doesn't seem to be enough to actually make a difference. So are we really talking about the right capacity with one individual, trained or untrained? It's one person. And then secondly, as we're talking about this, are we also talking about the locks on doors, systems of when people come in, are they identified? I don't know about all the ins and outs of the building, but it seems like if we're trying to get to a safe and secure environment, there's multiple fronts we need to be working on, and not just putting a security guard in the building. And if that security guard is in, I know I'm asking a lot, it's kind of wrong. But if that security guard is in the building, to me, it does seem like he is a part of the disciplinary authority of the building. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing, to be perfectly honest. To Dr. Johnson's point, everybody is a part of that solution. If there is a threat in the building, we need the security guard as well. So inside, outside, whatever the threats are, I think there's multiple ways that we need to think about a holistic approach to security that this one person in every building is not going to get us to.
Well, I want to address the mechanical components of each of the buildings. But
We
what
did
I like
say
to
we could talk about that, we can go into that in executive
Understood.
session to talk about that plan. So
Understood.
the first two of those, we can talk about that in
Yeah,
executive.
Right, well, if you're suggesting that maybe we could use more guards, I'm absolutely all for that.
I am suggesting.
I've been here for 3 months. We're trying to establish a baseline for each of the buildings, and based on the recommendations from Ohio School Council and our experience, getting one in the door would be fantastic. I guess we can look at adding additional officers as we go. But I agree to some of the points that were made. Hiring the right people for these positions is critical. It is critical. They have to really want to do the job. They have to care about those kids. They have to want to establish good, safe relationships with those kids. And I can't stress that enough. Again, every one of our officers is going to continue to go through training. We can get the best equipment in the world for these buildings. At the end of the day, it's all about the relationships. It's all about finding the right people to do the job. And we will do everything we can to make sure that those officers work hand in hand with the administrators and the staff and become part of the family, part of the fabric of each of those buildings.
Some more questions?
Just last one thing, piggybacking with, having critical, definitely having the right people. Ms. Bree really spoke to my concerns, so thank you for that, Ms. Bree. Included with the training, will there be some strategies with mental health? Because as we know, COVID has exposed a lot of that as some of the reasons of certain responses and whatnot. So will that training encompass some restorative mental health strategies and things of that nature. I know it's not mental health therapist or anything like that, but at least the thought process.
No, that's a great point. I know CPI does address some of those issues, and we're looking at providing more training for our officers as we go along. So, no, that's a point well taken. Thank you.
And I know Mr. Elder there, I don't know if you want to speak to some of that training, or Mr. Waters would like to speak to some of that training.
We just want to hear from all of you.
I don't know if I can
You were
speak.
sitting right there.
I know, I said, and he's talking to me to the side, he's like, sir, you do. So, let me go through the process. First of all, Ms. Lifford, I haven't met you, so nice to meet you. Congratulations. Hello, everybody. Kenneth Elder, Director of Student Services. One of the responsibilities of Student Services is overseeing the Social Emotional Learning Program. Through myself and Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters has been, over the last couple of years, been very much so providing the restorative practices framework for the district. And we talked a lot about what that looks like for our security team. And then as a unit, we have several trained individuals trained to provide training for our staff in the area of non-crisis intervention through CPI. And so we've been providing that to our new staff as well as our security. And that does cover quite a bit. It's a 2-day training, 8-hour training in total. The first day really does focus on the science of mental health and understanding yourself and your space and how that relates to the individuals that you're working with. The good portion of the training, the meat of it really is about using those relationships and understanding how those relationships will truly affect your interaction with those individuals. It talks about this notion between integrated experience, which is essentially how what you do affects what other people do and don't do. And so that in and of itself, just that 8-hour training, if we just let that alone, I felt very confident that as we do that on an annual basis that we're covering that mental health portion of it. But adding in the piece about the restorative practice is now looking at the science of helping students understand how, when they do negatively affect their environment or the school, how to come back and restore themselves to the natural order of business as it relates to what we want them to do in school. Add that to the fact that we also have a PBIS framework, that positive behavior intervention support. That framework in and of itself is a district-wide initiative to help us understand and our students understand what we expect from them and how we go about getting to that point where we're interacting positively and providing a pro-social approach to what we want in school. So they're going to hear all of that. They're going to talk a lot about that throughout the course of their training from the days that they come in. Each one of our PDs, whenever we get an opportunity to do that, or anything that we provide for them off campus.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Any more questions?
I have a question as well. In addition to adding possible security, and this might be more for facilities though, is there also plans in place to look at securing our buildings better, checking these soft entry doors if they need to have locks or alarms on them, or increasing cameras in dark spaces around the building? Is that part of the plan as well with adding security?
I don't think we want to address that. It's a great question.
We'll go to that executive session.
I don't know specifics. I just want to know if that was part.
Yeah, we do want to talk to you more about that.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions for it? All right. Thank you, Mr. Heedy, and
Thank
thanks
you
for
very much.
everyone that came up to offer their recommendations. And I just have to say, I was really shocked when I actually came on the board that we did not secure buildings with security guards at the elementary level. In fact, I was actually one of the board members that suggested that we should really look into that. So I look forward to the discussion happening in our executive session, and we will not be voting on anything tonight in regards to that, but we will be discussing it in the executive session. So thank you. The next item on the agenda is a personnel item, which is 3.01. And we will be discussing the candidates for the interim superintendent position. And let me just go back a little bit. We did post the position, interim superintendent, and we interviewed, we had actually 2 candidates, and we interviewed on March 9th, and we will be presenting in an open discussion tonight. Before you, we will actually present our first choice for that position, and so we will be starting with each board member informing everyone of their choice and just a short reason why that candidate was their first choice. So we will begin with Mr. Would you please tell us your first choice for the interim superintendent position?
My first choice is Dr. Cassandra Johnson. Dr. Johnson has demonstrated not only her commitment to the district and to our students and educators, but tremendous competence, understanding of the needs and of our district and kind of what we need as in our community for our schools to do for our community. And I have a great deal of confidence and trust that her integrity as well as her vision is what is needed for us right now.
Thank you, Mr. Lippert. Ms. Macklin.
My first choice was Dr. Johnson. I really believe that we can move Bedford forward with Dr. Johnson and all her many people that work behind her. As long as they work with her and we work with her and you guys work with her, then we can get Bedford going where we want it to go. Dr. Johnson to me seemed like the person that really cares about her employees, her students, and she just seemed like the person that would really come in, and so far from what I've seen, she's done it. She stepped in and she's doing what she needs to do, and I will back her all the way. And I hope that her employees that work close to her, I hope they do the same thing, because if you do that, then you can move up along with her. And she can do what she needs to do for Bedford. She's really concerned about her kids, and that's the main thing. It's all about our students. And I think Dr. Johnson will be the person to take care of the students, the staff, and the school system. So Dr. Johnson, thank you. I got your back all the way, and you'll be great.
Thank you, Ms. Macklin. Ms. Lakey?
All right. Out of the 2 candidates that came and interviewed before us, I personally am supporting Dr. Cassandra Johnson for the position, and the thing that stuck out to me was experience. We, as a district, we don't need someone to kind of learn the job and to kind of get started. I think we need someone that can hit the ground running. She expressed her deep care for the district, her care for just becoming a Bearcat, and just supporting our students and our teachers. And in addition, her background included being a director of HR, I believe, and that to me was very pivotal in my choice personally, because this job is going to require someone that has that type of knowledge, that type of mindset to address the different issues that we're going to face.
Thank you, Ms. Lakey. Ms. Birch?
Of the 2 candidates as well, my first choice was Dr. Cassandra Johnson. To concur with my colleagues, integrity, experience, already invested in the culture that's here. You are here for the students that we serve, and that's important. But most important is your humility. You serve with a humility and with a leadership style that is very visionary and can assist with transformation. And that's what we need right now. We need that experience to know what has been going on. And the idea is to already shape it. And you have definitely proven yourself not only just formally working with you as a colleague, because you definitely have proven it then, but even interviewing. You've definitely proven that you deserve to be here. So, hats off to you. I support you. As Ms. Sharon says, I hope everyone is supporting her as well to rally, because it's all about the students and keeping the morale to go up, because what we want is excellence for our students, and I do feel that you will help us guide us that way.
Thank you, Ms. Birch. Well, they stole everything I was going to say. So do I need to say it again? Well, I would just like to say that, Dr. Johnson, you've been at the table for the last 4.5 years. Not in the position as interim superintendent, but as assistant superintendent. You have shown that you are more than qualified. You have the credentials, the qualification. But the one thing that I noticed during the interviewing process is that every time you spoke, it was always child-centered. And that's what we need. You expect the best for our children, and you're not going to take it. We could tell from your many discussions and answering our question that you were not going to take anything less but the best for our children. You kept saying, our children deserve this. They deserve better, and we have to do this. So those things stuck out besides all the things that you bring to the table, the experience, the human resource piece, which is so, so important because that's where the relationship actually starts, when you're building a relationship with the people that we serve. You talked about community engagement, how we need to hear our families, hear our parents, hear the community. We have to come up with better ways to engage them and to communicate with them. All the things that we need for this position. So of course you were my first choice, and I know that with the support of this board that you're going to do well, with the support of the community you're going to do well, and it was the support of our families. Dr. Johnson, the Bedford Board of Education cannot do it alone. The saying is, it takes a village. You know, we really should look closely and pay close attention to those words. It does take a village. We are that village, and these are our children. I look forward to working with you, supporting you, being there, being beside you, coming up with that one thing that we really need to prioritize and work on it, something I heard today. We have one thing we need to do right away. Let's do that one thing and move on to something else. There's a lot of things that need to happen in our district. I do believe you are the person that could help us with those things. So you're my choice. I support you. I look forward to working with you. All right. It does appear that we have a consensus with the first choice, which is Dr. Cassandra Johnson. Do we need to have any additional discussion? Anyone on the board? All right then. Hearing none, could I please have a motion to appoint the interim superintendent?
I move to appoint Dr. Cassandra Johnson for the interim superintendent position and to authorize the board president to negotiate an employment contract with Dr. Johnson.
I second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Birch and second by Mrs. Macklin. Do we need any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mr. Lickford?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes. Motion passed 5-0. And you have to do one more line, and we'll just keep going. The motion passes, and Dr. Cassandra Johnson has been appointed to the interim superintendent position, and the board president will negotiate an employment contract with Dr. Johnson.
But I want to thank you, Board President, Vice President, Board members, for your support in the appointment. You know, as I shared before, I truly am grateful and humble and honored to serve. I guess it's a struggle for me to even kind of say that I'm here, because I'm definitely not that kid that got it all right. I didn't get all A's. I won't talk about those suspensions, Mom. But God has always put people in my life that have guided me back to my purpose. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't understand the struggle. But I have two amazing parents, a family, husband, and kids that have always said, you can do this. My parents would tell you very early on, about 45 years ago, I will look at them and say, am I smart? What is wrong with me? Why can't I learn like every other kid? But you looked at me and you said, you are amazing, you are smart, you are beautiful, and you can do this. I have a husband that has said, yes, you can do this. You can be a mom, you can be a wife, I got your back, you can do this. I have children that have said, Mom, I'm proud of you. You can do this. I know you love Bedford. You can do this. I have a niece here tonight that is like one of my own that says, I'm proud of you. She texts me. She calls me. She says, I'm praying for you. I have Mr. and Mrs. Stevens that text me. You call me. You pray for me. I have principals here. I have Colleen and your husband here. One of the things that you told me, Mr. Jackson, was God's got it. He's going to work it out. So he has always put people in my life. And I believe even your time, Board, in this place is with purpose. And I agree that we are going to do this for our children, so I want to thank you. I know where I give honor and glory, but I want to thank you, and I appreciate you, and I'm most humbled and honored by this appointment. Thank you.
I just want to say to Dr. Johnson, welcome to the world I've been in for 69 years. You will love it. There's good people, there's bad people, but you can get through it. And believe me, this is a 6th generation school for me, and I'm still hanging around. I don't think, they always say, when are they going to get rid of me? I don't think they will. So Dr. Johnson, welcome to the big city of Bedford City School District.
Right. Also, I want to recognize, if I can, I do have family. And first, I want to start off awesome, Mr. Berger. I know you're very, very busy, but Mayor Berger is here from Bedford Heights, and I want to thank you because I know you are so, so busy, but you took out the time to come here tonight, and that means a lot to me, so I want to thank you. But my family, if you could just stand. They've seen my dad twice this week.
You guys want to come up right here? Sorry about your makeup on.
Everybody ready? One. I don't know if you can get him. 2,
want to recognize my mayor in Bedford Heights, Mayor Berger, thank you, and Council Stevens, who's with the board, member Stevens, but Councilman Stevens, and anyone else that, thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a major decision being made by this board, and I know you all support us, and we really, really do appreciate you just being here, being a part of this. As one of the actors would say, we're moving on up. So I'm looking forward to this new venture that we, this journey that we are partaking right now. And just thank you all. Just continue to support us, be there for us, and we are here for the Bedford City School District. At this time, we are going into.
I have one more thing before you go into.
Oh, well, of course.
I'm sorry, I almost forgot.
Okay.
Before we go into executive session, we do want to recognize some birthdays.
Oh.
So in March,
Birthdays there.
I believe we had Miss Birch, Miss Macklin, and Mr. Lifford.
Oh my goodness.
So you should have had cards there for your birthday, and then Colleen, thank you for picking up some green cupcakes for you. So if everybody could just maybe sing some happy birthdays for them, that'd be great. I'll let Mr. Balder start out, and you're doing that. I heard Mrs. Tariq was quite the singer as well. So we'll let you get started.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mirberger. Happy birthday to you.
We'll skip the how old are you part, just for the sake of time and candles. All right, thanks again, everyone. We will be going into executive session. We will have a few minutes for everyone to talk to Dr. Johnson and have a cupcake. So, could I have a motion, please, to go into executive session?
I move to enter into executive session.
I second that motion.
It has been moved by Ms. Birch and second by Mr. Aiken. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mr. Lifford?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes, motion passed 5-0. We will enter into executive session at 5:48. Thank you, everyone.